I'm going to talk about how to rehab your property so it's ready to be a rental and how to do a flip. I'm going to talk about all this in one video right now. And this is the Rich on Money podcast, episode 7. So I use the term make ready or rehab. And what I'm talking about is maybe you're buying a rental property and whatever condition it's in, you have to get it rent ready or what's called make ready. That's a term that's used a lot for property managers. Make it ready to be a rental. Same thing can happen between tenants. Somebody's lived in your property for 5, 7 years. They leave and you need to get it ready to be a rental again. Basically a make ready. This is going to involve replacing or fixing certain things, paint. We're going to go through all that today. I'm going to talk about prices on certain things as well. The next thing I'm going to talk about is either you're buying a property to flip it or you have a long-term rental and you're going to sell it. In both of those cases, you do what's called a full flip, which means you're going to spend the extra money to fully update bathrooms, fully update kitchen, probably put new floors in, maybe cabinets, maybe windows. Those two are tough. We're going to cover all this getting started right now. What I'm going to talk about is going to cover most types of rental properties, from lower middle income up until like nicer rentals. Now, if you're talking about the war zone, drug-ridden neighborhood, you buy it for $50,000 and it rents for $800 a month. This doesn't really apply to that. That's a separate strategy. And then up on the way high end, super expensive, nice properties, not going to apply as much. But to most of you, to your situation, what I'm going to talk about is probably going to apply to that. I'm here in Montgomery, Alabama, have about 30 rentals. I flip properties. I self-manage the properties that I own. And I've been doing this for a long time. I'll talk to you first about punch lists. Typically, you make something called a punch list, which is where you make some kind of a document that lays out the things that you want to get fixed. I like to do this with photos. If I walk through a property that I'm buying or walk through a rental that I'm turning over for another person or the rental I'm turning over to sell, I go through with a camera, the external of the house and then the interior, and I take pictures of all the things that I know I want to address. Then I simply go back to my computer, I go through those pictures, and I write up a list of what needs to get changed. And in some cases, you can attach the picture to the item on the list, and then it's more obvious what you want to get taken care of. That's how I make my punch list. I like to use Google Drive and save all these in separate folders by address, and I can keep track of all the pictures for a property. I've got thousands and thousands of pictures like this in Google Photos. I think I pay $1 or $2 a month for extra storage. Talk about another little hack I like to use. When I find a contractor and I'm sending him to do all this work, or different contractors, maybe several contractors for one job, I like to pay them for labor, and then I like them to go to Home Depot and buy what they need. Home Depot has something called, I think it's called text to pay, and you can enable it online. And when a contractor goes through the line, they can have Home Depot call you, and Home Depot can simply send you a text. You can pay on your phone or pay through texting, and then you get the receipt. You can also look at the items that they're purchasing before you pay. Make sure they're not buying anything that you didn't expect them to, or seeing if they're throwing in a monster drink or a soda, which it's up to you whether you let them or not, but for some reason that seems to happen a lot. When I'm trying to set up a make ready or a flip, one thing you have to decide is, are you going to find one contractor to do most of the work? One contractor that's going to handle floors and painting and replacing all the fixtures and plumbing? Or are you going to farm this out by specialty? Plumber to do this, person for floors, person for painting, person for plumbing. As you get practice, it's cheaper to find the specialty people, but it is hard to have it all happen in the right order and coordinate it all. You're going to spend more money, but life is a lot easier if you have less people working on it. If 1 or 2 people can do the entire job versus having 6 or 7 different people responsible for the entire job. On big expensive jobs, make sure you get 2 or 3 quotes, like getting a roof replaced, getting windows put in, getting a new water heater, HVAC system, flooring in your house. Get 2 or 3 quotes. It's worth it. Remember, the cheapest isn't always the best. Look at reviews and customer satisfaction and websites and all that. Make sure that your contractors are licensed. Make sure that they're willing to give you a W-9 so you can give them a 1099 at the end of the year. Real quick, how to find good contractors. One of my favorite things is, in every city, there should be some type of real estate investors association, something that meets like once a month that you can find on Google. They might have a Facebook group. There might be more than one group like this, but find the biggest, most established one in your city, attend it, and join whatever forum they have. In my case, it's a Facebook group. I really find this the best place to ask for contractors, and people are willing to share who they're using, and sometimes contractors can pitch themselves. and you can find out if somebody's used someone in the past and they say that they're a good guy, good gal, whatever. So now we're going to talk about a make ready, a situation where you either bought a property or have a rental property. In both cases, some work needs to be done so it's ready to be a new rental again. It needs to be rent ready. So you do a make ready to make it rent ready. Typically, that means you're not fully renovating kitchens and bathrooms because it's just becoming a rental property. It usually doesn't make economic sense to spend that money on a rental until you're going to sell. So I'm going to walk through a lot of the aspects and just talk about them. Let's walk up to a property. We're outside and we're just going to do the exterior first. You're going to need some experience to understand the roof, but you can walk around and look at the roof. There's something called nail pops. Are there spots where the shingles are lifted up? They seem to be lifted up and not laying flat. Is there discoloration? Does it look thin and worn? Has it been like patched in the past? The sections on the roof have different colors. Is there a tarp on it? You'll have these ideas of if the roof is old. When I think of Montgomery, Alabama, standard 3-bedroom, 2-bath property on 1,500 square feet, I don't know, it's going to run me $8,000 or so for a new roof. In more expensive markets, it's just more expensive to get a roof, but that's just a ballpark. A good roof contractor will let you know if you can keep this roof going or if it just has to be replaced. And you want to know this before you buy a house for sure, because you want to factor that cost in, that either you're replacing the roof now, you're having them replace it, or you're going to have to replace it soon. I like to look outside and just check those lights, like the front door light, the porch light, the back light. They're usually broken or messed up or not working. Get those replaced, get the bulbs in them. It's important for the rental property. It's sometimes nice to install floodlights on the corners that kind of light up when people walk by and stuff. I like that. It can be a good idea. It can be a deterrent to theft and stuff like that. Something to consider. Look at the front door, side door, back door from the outside. Does it need to be painted? Does it need to be replaced? Is it all dented up? Has someone like broken in and is it kind of like all messed up on the frame? Look at the water spigots. Turn them on and off. Does it leak? When you're outside, you're going to see the outdoor compressor. You'll see part of the HVAC unit that's outside, the one with the big fan on it, kind of that big box outside. Take a look at it. Maybe you'll see a little tag on there that shows you what year it was manufactured in, or you can see it from the serial number. Sometimes the first 2 numbers correspond with the year it was made in. A HVAC unit that's more than 20 years old is pretty damn old. Less than 15, you can probably keep it going. Typical HVAC unit on a smaller 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, $8,000, $9,000 in my market. You might see the gas meter outside. Is the gas meter on? Sometimes there's like an actual lock on the gas meter. If that lock is on there, then, gas isn't on. If you're going to buy the property, you need to get that gas turned on so you can test everything. Water heater system, things that might use gas, stove. Look at the wood around the house. You've got the roof, but you've got something called the soffit and the fascia. But basically like that wood section that's around the edge of the roof. And if it's rotted up really bad, if all that wood around the bottom section of the roof is rotten, you got to replace it and get it fixed. And there can be some money there depending on how bad that is. You want to consider trees and bushes. Kind of look around the property. Are there like massive trees over the top of the property that could break and fall and hit the roof that you're going to have to get trimmed back? How are the bushes around the property? You're going to have to spend some money to get that stuff taken care of, like do some landscaping to make it look normal again. How's the fence look? Are you going to have to repair it? How's the driveway? Is it all cracked up and messed up? Is it going to be okay? One time I bought a house that didn't have a driveway. I had to pour a gravel one. It was a pain in the butt. I like to make sure that there's a doorbell and that it works. I like to look at the fixtures on the doors, the deadbolt and the doorknob. Is that stuff all working correctly? I look at the weatherproofing around the door, open up the door and just make sure that it's got something that'll keep critters from crawling in and keep like wind or water from coming in. The electric box might be outside. You lift up that electric box. Ideally, it's got the breaker box that you're used to seeing. Hopefully it's labeled for the house and it looks well organized and done correctly. It also might be in the house somewhere or in the garage, but you want to eyeball this. Now we go into the house, right? Maybe one of the first things I'm going to think about is I'm going to look at the floors, right? Is there luxury vinyl plank, tile, carpet, hardwood floors, a mixture of these things? You need to decide if you can leave the floors as is for being a rental property, or if you're going to need to maybe polish and stain it, or if it's a carpet, you're going to get it professionally cleaned, try to get some of the stains out. You'll be surprised how many stains you can get out with a good professional carpet cleaner. If the floors are really messed up, you may just decide to put in a really good luxury vinyl plank for the entire house. It can even go in bathrooms and kitchen, and then your flooring's covered for the future. I like to do this with a luxury vinyl plank. Go to these stores that sell them, maybe the specialty ones that do flooring, Ask them what they're putting in rental properties. I like to find something for less than $2 a square foot, and I like to get it installed for about $2 a square foot. You should be able to get it all done for about $4 a square foot. That's just what I'm dealing with here in Montgomery, Alabama, just a starting point. I will keep carpet if that's what I have in a rental. I'll get it professionally cleaned if it needs it, but once it's totally shot, I don't replace it with carpet. Then I put in luxury vinyl plank. It's just more economical for long-term rentals, easier to deal with. Tenants like it more. I like it more resilient. Now let's look at the walls. Can you get away with not painting? Do some of the rooms have old-fashioned wood paneling, which looks like crap? A lot of times I like to paint over that with some standard color, but decide on painting. Typically, you're going to paint a rental property if someone's been there for a while, or if you're just buying it. But sometimes you buy a property where the paint's in good shape. Sometimes when a rental property turns over, even if someone lived in it 3 years or 5 years, it might be in good shape and you may not end up painting it again. And sometimes you can just, if you can match the paint or you know the paint color, you can just paint certain walls or touch up certain areas. Doesn't always work, but sometimes. You might spend, I don't know, $1,500 on the low end, $3,000 on the high end to paint a 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath property. Just a ballpark figure. You could paint it yourself. I don't do that. When you paint, you consider things like the doors in the house, the closet doors, the cabinets in the kitchen. This is a big one. Again, for rental properties, I like to paint the cabinets white. That can fix almost anything that looks old-fashioned and outdated. There might be better ways to do it, but that really works for me. The walls in the house, right? When you pay someone to paint, you usually want them to do things like fix holes in the walls, take out all the nails, plug the holes, make them so they're going to be flat when you paint them. That kind of prep is important. Make sure that your painter or somebody's going to do that wall prep so your walls just look flat and normal and don't have blemishes. If there's spots that are messed up from where somebody installed a TV and jerked it off the wall or whatever, you want to cover all that up and make it nice again. We'll talk about ceiling fans. I personally don't like ceiling fans. So if my properties have working ceiling fans, I'll leave them in there. If my properties have outdated and or broken ceiling fans, I take them down and I put up some kind of light in its place, not a fan. I tend to put these circular flat LED lights that aren't too expensive at Home Depot, and they're a lot nicer than those like dome lights that kind of look like a boob. Those are too old school for me. Let's go into the kitchen now. When it's a rental property, we really want to avoid replacing the countertop. We want to avoid replacing the cabinets. We hopefully can just paint them and repair them. We might want to switch out new hardware on them. We might need to mess with the hinges, repair drawers that aren't closing correctly. If you need to replace the countertops and it's a rental property, they have a cheap basic countertop at Home Depot that's not very expensive. It's got particle board stuff. It's just standard in most normal rental properties. If you're talking about quartz, granite, marble, that's a lot more expensive. That's more for a flip or a higher end rental where you can charge a premium. Hopefully you can just leave the countertop as is. Maybe you have to replace it. I think the ones at Home Depot and Lowe's are pretty cheap. Let's talk about lighting in the whole house, lighting in the kitchen. A lot of times in the kitchen, you're going to have that, like those old tube lights that are ugly and the bugs all get trapped in there and they kind of make a buzzing sounds like halogen or something. I like to replace that. A lot of times they're rectangular. I like to replace that with a flat rectangular LED light. Just looks a lot better. I like to replace all the lights in the house with kind of these flat, either round LED lights, rectangular ones, or just nice basic ones for the bathrooms. But replacing almost every light fixture in the house and replacing any old ceiling fans with the same kind of nice light fixture is worth it. Even though some of the lights might cost more, like the one in the kitchen that's rectangular might cost $80. Some of the bigger ones in a bedroom, a bigger round one that's a flat LED light, I don't know, it might cost $40, $50. It's just worth it. The house will look so much better, especially with a new paint job and especially if you end up doing luxury vinyl plank or something to make the floors look nice again. Still in the kitchen, and do this in the bathrooms as well. Open it up. That area under the sink where stuff could leak, there's like particle board or some kind of flat wooden section on the bottom. If that's had bad leaks in the past, it's probably all chewed up, all ruined, got mold on it. If you need to replace that piece, get it replaced. Check for leaks. Check and see that the garbage disposal works. If a property doesn't have a garbage disposal, I'm not adding it. If it has one, I make sure it works. It's not expensive to replace the faucet in a kitchen, if that makes sense. If it looks outdated, looks rusty, leaks, whatever. In the kitchen, you've got the appliances, right? Is the stove going to be okay? Can you get that stove professionally cleaned and keep it? The range that's above the stove that like sucks up the air and all that. How messed up is that thing? Those aren't too expensive. Maybe you get a new one. The fridge, can you keep that fridge? Maybe the house came with a fridge or you put one in there for your rental property and hopefully you can turn that over for the next person. If there are drawers inside that are broken, I've had success finding those replacement drawers on Amazon and just getting, or even the handle on the door and just getting those things replaced instead of replacing the whole fridge. I've also gone through this whole thing of using used fridge in properties. Used fridges don't work very well because you save a couple $100 and then it doesn't work and then you got to go out and buy a new one anyway. When a fridge conks out, I just buy a new fridge. The rule of thumb, washer, dryer, fridge, stove, they all cost between $500 and $600 if they're rental quality. And you can get stainless steel ones for just a little bit more. Now let's go into the bathroom. When I flip a property, I like to, if possible, remodel the whole bathroom. If it's just a rental property and a make-ready, if it's pretty old, if you got a pretty old and ugly vanity, an old light above the vanity, if the toilet looks dirty and old and it's small, those three things can be replaced pretty cheap. New vanity, new toilet, new vanity light, and you can really breathe life into a bathroom. So something to consider. You got to keep your costs down. You can probably keep most of those things, do repairs, you can paint. A lot of times a built-in vanity or an old vanity that's got ugly colors like a weird brown, paint it white like the kitchen or paint it something nice. You can consider changing out the fixtures on a tub, the fixtures on a shower. Not too expensive to change out just the fixtures. You look at the tiles or however the bathroom's set up. Hopefully they don't need to be repaired. Hopefully they aren't cracking, falling apart. There isn't like obvious water damage. If it's bad, you might have to consider remodeling the bathroom to redo those tiles. That's a pretty expensive thing. Hopefully you can avoid that. Make sure that your bathroom has a working vent fan. If there's one in there and it doesn't work, get it fixed or replace it. If there isn't one, get it installed. It's just important for circulating air in there and making sure that you don't grow mold. Mold is like the F word for rental properties. You don't want mold growing in a bathroom. Going back out into the house, one thing that's important is blinds. You've got those really cheap blinds that are super thin and kind of almost like aluminum feeling. Those are the cheapest ones you can put into your rental property. You can do that. A small step up is these 2-inch blinds that are either wood or fake wood. I tend to put those in my rentals. Now, certain families are going to mess them all up and you're going to have to replace them when they move out. So just something to consider. But get some kind of blinds on every window. It's just expected. When you're inside the house, look at the interior doors. Are there doors you're going to have to fix? Are there doors you're going to need to paint? Are there doors you're just going to have to flat out replace? Make sure doors open and close correctly, latch correctly. You're going to need handymen to fix them in the cases they don't. Especially like front and back doors, exterior doors. Sometimes they stick when they're closed because they've swollen. Sometimes they just need small adjustments so they open and close and lock correctly. The laundry room will have some sort of like a box where the drain goes in for the water out of the washing machine and where the hot and cold water come out with tubes. This box and the plumbing on it is sometimes rusted, cracked, looks really bad. Sometimes you can have a plumber just come in and like redo that box because that's the kind of thing you don't want to leak and you don't want to have a problem. Water can really mess up a property. I like to replace those things if they look bad. Now we're going to talk about the CapEx items. The expensive items and how to deal with that when you're doing a make-ready turnover for a rental versus when you're flipping a property or when you're selling it, because there's a big difference in how you handle these CapEx items. Now, CapEx means capital expenditures. They're items that are expensive that you replace every 5 years or 10 years or 30 years, not things you replace every time you turn over a rental property. Examples of this would be like a water heater, which should last 20 years, an HVAC unit, which should last 20 years. A roof, which should last 30 years. A driveway, which could last a really long time, like 50 years. You need to make sure that these things are working properly and are going to work for the foreseeable future. If they're less than the dates I just mentioned, there's a good chance that you can just keep repairing them and keep them running for the time being. If they're past those dates that I just mentioned, you either should have them replaced when you buy the property, maybe the seller's willing to replace them for you, or plan on needing to replace them in the near future. And that needs to get calculated into your budget, right? Because you might get stuck with that bill soon. But typically on a rental, you don't rush out and replace those things, you keep repairing. But if you're going to sell a property and one of those items is pretty old, you're going to sell it better, make more money if you're able to replace those things and say they're brand new when you put it up for sale. Brand new roof, brand new water heater, right? Brand new HVAC system, new flooring, in certain cases, new windows, in certain cases, new cabinets. Those two are rare. You're just going to sell for a lot more money if you replace those things, but it hardly ever makes sense to replace those things for a rental. Just keep fixing as you need to. It just makes more economic sense. unless somebody tells you this item can't be fixed, it has to be replaced. And then that's just life. So this is all rent-ready stuff. A water heater might run you $1,200 installed. Keep in mind there's these tankless water heaters now. I see them in new houses a lot, at least where I am. All right, so that's a make-ready. That's getting ready for a rental. What's the difference if you're going to sell the property or if it's a flip? The difference is kitchens and bathrooms. That's the major difference. You're almost always going to want to do something nice, something modern, something a little trendy, right? First of all, paint. Paint prices don't differ by color, so you might as well use a modern color every time. I use something called Repose Gray by Sherwin-Williams, but just pick something that's trendy and everybody likes. Off-whites seem to go well. But now we're talking about kitchens, right? You got to get the cabinets looking good. Hopefully you don't have to replace. It's just so expensive, but you do a really good job of getting it painted so it looks great. Now you might want to get good countertops, maybe some type of granite countertop, or maybe quartz countertop. The cheap one I talked about earlier is laminate, the ones that you sell at Home Depot and Lowe's for cheap. You can use those on lower end flips, but you're better off putting the nice stuff in, attracting top dollar, attracting somebody who's excited to live in the property. You want new flooring in the house. Ideally, you just do the whole house luxury vinyl plank. A lot of times people just go into the kitchen and go into the bathrooms with that same exact luxury vinyl plank for a flip. That's just what seems to be what's working these days. It's not horribly expensive and it's waterproof. When you change out all the fixtures in the house, maybe make it a little bit nicer. Spend a little more money getting nicer fixtures. Maybe something that's over the dining room table, a little bit nicer. Sometimes if there's a fireplace, maybe you get that fireplace like painted or changed a little so it looks better, not just leave the old school red brick fireplace in there. Consider that. Appliances in the kitchen. It really helps if they're brand new fridge, new stove, new range over the stove, new dishwasher. Now, if properties have a dishwasher, I'll leave them in there. If they don't have one, I typically don't add one. It might make sense for you to use all stainless steel appliances when you're flipping, but you can use black or white and it'll still look pretty good. Kitchens for a flip, bathrooms is the next big one. It really helps if you go ahead and price doing a full remodel. Pull it all out, put in a new tub or a new shower or both, whatever was there before. New floor, probably luxury vinyl plank. New tile that looks really nice and modern. There's really good stuff at Home Depot on those. It's not expensive that you can redo your showers with. You can look at other properties that are being sold. You can talk to contractors that do bathrooms and see pictures of other jobs they've done. It's the whole bathroom. So the vanities replaced, the toilets replaced, floor. The walls are like the bathroom and tub are pulled out. You change out the exposed plumbing, all new fixtures. It's just a new bathroom. Get the price for it. On the lower end, $5,000 to $7,000 per bathroom. Obviously, if it can still look good by just replacing toilet, vanity, and vanity light, and making sure that the vent fan works, and replacing the fixtures, that's a lot cheaper than putting in a new tub and or shower. But that's the big difference with a flip. I'd also say new floor that goes throughout the whole house is a big part of a flip. You want those things done because when you go to sell your property, I'm a realtor, I know this stuff. If you're highly remodeled, people jump on that property and buy it quick and fight over it. If you're a tired rental that people are trying to sell, and you didn't want to put money into it because you're cheap and you don't understand how to sell properties, those can languish on the market. Those can sit there for a while. You're going to have to keep dropping the price and it's just not fun. I love selling a newly remodeled property. You put that money in, you typically get it back plus more. Some cases you might just break even and sell it really fast versus not do the work and have it take 3 or 4 or 6 months. And there's a cost in it being vacant that long. Plus you have the risk of being vandalized over that time when it's vacant. Now, when you flip a property, the CapEx items are important. And again, remember the CapEx items: roof, water heater, HVAC. If you don't replace them, people are going to complain about it. And they might ask you to replace it after the inspection anyway. It's going to be more attractive if they're brand new, but sometimes you can just wait and see if they ask you to put in a new one. Cabinets and windows, I'll close with this. I very rarely have replaced those two things. You want to do anything you can to keep existing cabinets, keep existing windows. It's a very large cost, hard to make financial sense. I'll avoid buying a property if I know I have to replace those things unless I really price that into it. Whatever, if it's going to be $10,000 to redo windows, you got to get it cheap enough to make sense. Same for cabinets or maybe more. Again, it has to make sense. That's an expensive thing. I typically avoid those on flips. That's just me personally. What did I miss or what did you like most about what I said? Put it in the comments for me. Subscribe. Tell your friends about the Rich on Money podcast. This is episode 7, and this is Rich from Rich on Money, signing off.